Hello friends. So today in this session we are going to learn about Azure Storage Service. And in this video we will just see the introduction to Azure Storage Service. So before getting into the Azure Storage Service, let me give you some motivation of why is this service so important. Okay. So as you all know that in today's world, data comes in different shapes and sizes, right? And there is no single storage solution which will fit all your data. That means all kinds of data cannot fit into one kind of storage solution. For example, if we take online retail website, so in this business you will have different kind of data, like you will have product catalog data set, you will have media files like photos and videos, you will have financial business data, and each of these data set will have different requirements. Okay, so it is our job to figure out which storage solution is going to be best for each of these kind of data. But then how do you decide which storage solution is going to be optimal? So it all depends how you classify your data and how your data will be used and how you can get the best performance for your application. So choosing the correct storage solution will help you to attain better performance, cost savings, and improved manageability. So these are all the points that we need to take care when we're selecting the right storage solution. Now let us see what Azure provides us in this area to store our data. So Azure provides multiple database options, okay? Like it provides us Azure SQL database, Azure Cosmos DB, and Azure table storage. It also provides two more services which provides a way to store and send messages, okay? Those two services are Azure Queues and Event Hubs. And there are two more services like Azure Files and Azure Blobs, which are used to store the files. So now these are all the different ways that Azure provides us to store our data. But then we have to decide which storage solution will be best for our requirement. Now, out of all these services, Azure groups 4 of the data services together under the name Azure Storage. Okay, and those 4 services are Blobs, Azure Files, Azure Queues, and Azure Tables. So if you see in this diagram, all these 4 services are present in your in the main service called Azure Storage. That means when you go for Azure Storage, you will be provided with the capabilities of all these 4 services. Okay, further we will see what each service is all about and how we make use of this service and what kind of data we can store in each of these services. So first of all, let's see what exactly is this Azure Storage Service. So now I just want to first, tell you that this is a very important Azure service, and it is a core service where whatever service that you are going to use in Azure, you will be touching upon this service definitely. That means when you are designing your application, this service is must and is going to be very useful. Okay, so you take any kind of roles, let it be developer or any architect role. So whenever you're whenever any architect is designing an enterprise application, so they need to decide, okay, they need to decide the architecture based on the requirements and based on the capabilities that Azure Storage Service provides, based on the cost, based on the scalability that it provides. So the Azure Storage Service provides a way to implement asynchronous programming using Azure Queues. So we will see that how it is possible using Azure Queues further. So now if I talk about the different kinds of data that we have. So we have got 3 different kinds of data. Okay, we have got structured data, we have got unstructured data, and we have got partially structured data. Now, what is the difference between these 3 kinds of data? So structured data is more of like is data we store in SQL. in a table format, where you will have defined number of columns, and you will know, okay, in this column you are going to store this data, and this is the type of the data. So everything will be defined. There will be certain rules that you will have when you are storing your structured data in your table. But when it comes to unstructured data, there is no definite rule. Okay, unstructured data is something like your jpeg files, your mp4 files, your images. So for all these kind of files, you don't have any structure, you don't have any rule. Okay, like you have to store it in this column, or you have, this is the data type, there is no rule. So that is called as unstructured data. And then comes our partially structured data. So what is partially structured data? A partially structured data is something like you have your JSON object, your XML object, or sometimes even your CSV is considered as partially structured data. So we are categorizing our data into these three categories. Now, how do you make use of Azure storage service to store these kinds of data? Okay, so for structured data, you can make use of your table storage, okay, your SQL database. And for unstructured kind of data, we will make use of blob storage. So what is Azure storage service? It is a PaaS service provided by Microsoft Azure, which will help us to store both unstructured and partially structured data. Why is this service so important? So there are three important features that this service provides, like it scalability. Okay, what is scalability? That means you can make use of this service for small amounts of data. You can start your business with small amounts of data, and then you can scale it up to terabytes of data. Okay, that means you are not going to pay upfront if you want to make use of this service for a huge amount of data. But if you are a startup business, and then if you want to start with a small amounts of data, you can just make use of this service, and you will be paying only for the small amount of data that you are going to store. And in the future, when you are growing up, when your data is growing, you can scale up to terabytes of data, and then you will be paying for what you are going to use. Okay, next is durability. So Azure storage service is highly durable. How? Azure stores minimum 3 copies of your data. That means if something goes wrong with one file, okay, let's say one rack of your data center. So always the data will be available from other racks in the data center. So within a physical location, within a data center, it is going to maintain 3 copies of your data. Okay, so racks are something like disks connected to your computer, and on all the 3 disks, same data is going to be available. So that way you can ensure that your data is always available. Next is highly available. Okay, so apart from durability, it also provides highly available feature. So how does it do that? It replicates all your data among different regions. That means if you select that you want to replicate your data to different regions, so Azure storage will do that. Let's say that if I have my data in East US, so I can replicate it to West US. Okay, and if suppose any data center goes down completely, okay, like complete shutdown of the data center, that means all your 3 racks that you have stored in the data center, that is completely shut down. So that can be the scenario, like you may have natural disaster or some floods would have come. So in that case, your data will be available from another region, okay, within no time. So that way you can ensure that your data is highly available. And we have to remember that if you are storing your data in East US, and if you want to replicate it to some other region, so there will be paired region with the East US, so you can replicate only to that paired region. So it does not mean that you can replicate to any region of your choice. You will not be given that choice. You will always have for every region a paired region, and your data will be replicated to that paired region only. So we have to remember this point. So Azure storage is massively scalable and elastic, and it can help you to store hundreds of terabytes of data, and they will support big data scientist scenarios, like if you want to store big data which is present in your financial analysis or your media applications. Okay, or you can also store small amounts of data that is required for small business websites. Okay, so this is about introduction to Azure storage service. Now, so next point. So you can have up to 100 storage accounts in your single Azure subscription. And each standard storage account can contain up to 500 terabytes of data combined together: blob, queue, table, and file data. So as I have shown above, our Azure storage service comprise of four internal services, service, that is blob, queue, table, and file. So all the data put together from all these services can be up to 500 terabytes in one particular storage account. And one more thing you need to remember: as the demands of your storage application grow, okay, your storage will be automatically allocated. Okay, that means storage will be automatically get scaled. You need not bother and you need not interfere with it if your data is growing. So it automatically allocates the appropriate resources so that it will meet your demand at any point of time. So these are the very powerful capabilities of this Azure storage service. So now let's see what are the four different types of Azure storage service that is available in Azure storage. Okay, so it offers four types of storage services. First one is blob storage. Now, what is the importance of blob storage? As I told you earlier, that we have got huge unstructured data, something like your video files, your MP4 files. So we call them as binary data. So now you can store your these kind of files, like your text or any binary files or any PDF files or any documents or any media files or any your application installers like your exe files. All these you can store as a blob in your blob storage. So we call these files as a blob. Okay, or you also call it as an object. So basically it is used to store an object kind of data or a file kind of data, and hence it is also called as object storage. Okay, so we will study further in further videos about blob storage in detail. Okay, so at this point we should just remember we can store file kind of data in your blob storage. So next service is table storage. So what does table storage stores? It stores partially structured data. Okay, so partially structured is something like your NoSQL kind of data, where you will have key attribute data stored. Okay, your data will be in the form of key value pairs, and you can store large quantities of data. But again, if you have a requirement of enterprise applications, okay, where you have huge data and you need very high performance, then you can go for a Cosmos DB. Okay, so Cosmos DB also offers the similar kind of capabilities to store your NoSQL kind of data. But again, if it is a normal application and if it is not a distributed kind of application across the globe, then you can make use of table storage. It is very cost effective and it also helps you to store large amounts of data. Okay, so basically it is used to store partially structured data. Next service is queue storage. So queue storage is basically used when your application wants to communicate asynchronously. So what does that mean? That means your applications will not wait for other application to be up and running. So irrespective of the state of the applications, irrespective of the state of your sender and receiver applications, your application will be sending the message to the queue, and queue will store the message, and whenever the receiver application is ready to consume the message, it can consume it from the queue storage. So queue will act as an intermediate between your application, where one application is going to post the message or post the data, and other application is going to receive it. Okay, and at any point of time, let's say that your receiver application is not ready, or it is running at a different pace, and it wants to consume the message at later point of time, your message is not going to get lost. Okay, messages will be persisted in the queue storage, hence we call it as reliable messaging. So it helps to communicate between the different components of your cloud services asynchronously. Okay, so next service we have is a file storage service. Now, file storage service is almost similar to blobs. Okay, here also we store unstructured files. But then what is the importance of the file storage? When we have blob storage, then why we have to go for file storage? Okay, so here the speciality of it is that if suppose you have got legacy applications, okay, the applications, you know, which are existing for long time, and they are almost functioning very well, but then you are migrating to Azure, and then when you want to migrate to Azure, and you do not want to make any change to your legacy applications, and let's say that your legacy applications are using some kind of networking file system. Okay, that means they are programmed using file system, like you have used some system.io packages. Okay, and then you want to migrate this application to your Azure. So in order to migrate to Azure without making any change, this file storage is very, very handy. Okay, so how this file storage helps is it creates a centralized storage for your organization. Okay, and you will be internally, it will map a drive on your local machine. So something like, you will have something like C colon on your local machine, or D colon on your local machine, and then whenever you refer to a file storage, that means if your app is writing data to your drive D colon or whatever drive that it has mapped to on your local machine, in the background internally it will be writing to your file storage only. So this is the facility available in file storage. Okay, but it should not be used if you are programming a new application. So for that kind of I mean, for any new application that you are writing, you can make use of blob storage. But if you are bringing any legacy application into the cloud environment, then file storage is very useful. You should always go for file storage. Okay, so this is about file storage. So these are all the 4 services that is available in Azure storage service. So we will further see each of these services in detail. Thank you.